by blocking shipping, hitting Ukraine's port infrastructure and sabotaging the grain corridor. Moscow did everything it could to provoke a global food crisis. Russia stole millions of tons of grain from the temporarily occupied territories, worth about $1 billion. As a result of the Russian army's attacks on ships and Ukrainian port infrastructure, 220,000 tons of grain were destroyed, most of which should have gone to the poorest countries in the world.
Our position is principled. We believe that no one in the world has the right to block free navigation and to turn food shortages into weapons. Using hunger as a weapon is an element of genocidal policy, and any state that encroaches on this must be held accountable. Moreover, it is also a global moral obligation of all states of the world not to allow anyone in the modern world to suffer from hunger.
Before the full-scale war unleashed by the Kremlin, Ukraine was one of the biggest suppliers of grain in the world. The International Rescue Committee warns that in the long term, the reduction in exports of Ukrainian agricultural products will worsen the global food crisis. More than 1 billion people may suffer from hunger due to rising food prices.
The Kremlin is using hunger as a weapon. Putin falsely claims to solve a problem he himself exacerbated with his unprovoked and unjustified full-scale invasion of Ukraine and targeting of Ukraine's grain supply depots and transportation hubs. In the 1930s, Stalin weaponized hunger as a weapon against Ukraine, causing millions of Ukrainians to perish. Nearly a century later, another cruel denizen of the Kremlin is weaponizing hunger against the world. From a statement on the US State Department website.
The Kremlin is trying to completely block Ukrainian grain supplies to African countries. In return, it is offering its food to Somalia, Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Mali, Eritrea, and the Central African Republic.
Ukraine used to provide more than 40% of the world's grain exports. So obviously, taking Ukraine out of this market means that Russia can take it over. And the only question here is to what extent the sanctions allow this, and to what extent African leaders are ready to buy such grain. Because the grain is basically the same, but the price of it is completely different. The price is also moral, because this grain is sprinkled with blood.
Experts believe that Moscow is using the threat of famine as a tool to strengthen its influence in the region.
Russia is doing this for a reason. It is gaining access to the gold mines of these countries, minerals production, especially oil and gas, but also diamonds, iron ore, which in turn is then sold to richer countries. So Russia is obviously using these countries that are rich in natural resources for its own enrichment.
Kyiv, together with international partners, is setting up shipping in the Black Sea. In the first year alone, the Grain from Ukraine initiative delivered 170,000 tons of Ukrainian grain to Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Yemen. Another dry cargo ship is being prepared for shipment, which will deliver grain to the port of Nigeria to provide food for about 400,000 people. Reported by Anastasia Tarnavska, Larisa Zubanko, UATV News.